Welcome to UK Business Show. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions, helping business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host, UK Kachidori.
Well, guys, it's so great to have you once again. Today on the show, I'm joined by the CEO expert, Roger Harrop. Now, Roger has done extremely well over the years. In fact, he has over 20,000 business leaders in over 45 countries, all looking up to him and using his method. And I'm super excited today because Roger is going to be showing you things that are working today that if you are getting started as a business owner, if you just in one of his nuggets he's going to be sharing with you, it may possibly skyrocket your business. Thank you, Roger, for joining us on the show today.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Yukai. How are you today?
I'm very, very well. You know, I know how busy you are, and for us to have you on the show here is such a privilege, and we're excited that we can learn one or two things that you've done in the past. Now, for those who have never come across your work, Roger, just a very brief intro about what you've done in the past and what you're doing right now.
Okay. By profession, I'm an engineer and a marketer, and I ran businesses. Over 25 years, I ran all kinds of businesses all over the world. I ended up running a PLC quoted on the London Stock Exchange. We had subsidiaries, again, in 14 companies around the world. We manufactured in the US and Taiwan as well as the UK. And we were quoted in Forbes magazine once as one of the top 100 overseas companies, and also by in a UK government white paper as one of the experts in business success. So that was my background. And about 10 years ago, I decided I'd had enough of that, and I set up on my own. And what I do now is I'm a professional speaker. I travel the world, I speak at conferences, I run masterclasses, typically one day or half a day masterclasses, always with business leaders. So my audience is business leaders from a brand new startup all the way through to the main board of the biggest multinational corporate in the world. And what people say to me is that I've got a bit of a gift. What I'm able to do is to make business simple. No matter what the business is, no matter where it is, I always seem to have an ability to make it simple and to be able to map out the route to business success. I also act as a business advisor and a non-executive director. And I enjoy myself. I do an awful lot these days in the so-called developing world, and we'll talk perhaps a little bit more about that later, because I think it's the developed world, and I'm certainly telling people in Europe that they need to be looking over their shoulders, because I'm seeing the most amazing stuff happening in places like Pakistan and Ethiopia and in the Middle East. So that's me. That's what I do.
And you know, you've been traveling for the last 25 years, which is incredible. You know,
I've always enjoyed getting inside the business culture of different countries. I find that something that absolutely fascinates me. And I'm basically very nosy, so I love other people's business too.
Well, we are delighted to have you on this show. In fact, we've entitled this show based on your expertise in working with new business. In fact, we entitled this show as How to Win in the New Game of Business Today, and paying particular attention to the critical skills business owners need to develop if they're going to stay ahead of the pack, so to speak. So I've got to just maybe to get us started on that. You know, you've worked with business owners. What is the number one skill that you would say, look, if you're getting started, if you focus on developing this skill, you increase your chances of winning?
Well, what I would say, Yukai, more than anything else is business leaders have got to get some time up in the helicopter, as I call it. They've got to get up there and look at the big picture. And today, more than ever before, I find I'm saying to business leaders generally now, they've got to find 20% of their time to be up there looking at the big picture, looking at what's coming over the horizon and planning for it and planning their long term, because things are moving so quickly now, whether it's markets or technology. They're moving at the most amazing speeds, and the person who's got to be anticipating that, to see how they can deal with that for to protect the future and develop their business, is the boss, is the business leader. So somehow you've got to develop this discipline of getting up there in the helicopter, looking at the big picture and keeping it simple, because business is simple. At the end of the day, someone's got something to sell, somebody wants to buy, and maybe someone has to make something. That's all it is.
Indeed. Now, somebody may argue, why is it so important today than ever before?
Okay, well, what I am seeing around the world now, Yukai, is a leveling of the playing field. I'm seeing a leveling of the playing field between large companies and small, and I'm seeing a leveling of the playing field internationally.
Right.
I mean, taking that last point first, let's be honest. If you've got broadband now, you can be anywhere in the world. You can develop a world-class business. You don't have to be in Silicon Valley or Tokyo or London. You can be anywhere in the world. A lot of people at the moment are talking about Silicon Safari, which is a group of software engineers in Nairobi that are doing amazing things. Lahore in Pakistan is now becoming a center of app development. So that's the leveling of the playing field internationally. I find that incredibly exciting. And secondly, there's a leveling between small businesses and large, and that's really around, technology, because new technology, new digital technology is arriving these days at eye-watering speed. And every piece of research you look at says, we ain't seen nothing yet. It's just going to get faster and faster and faster. And what I find is that small businesses naturally look at that technology, whatever it might be, and a lot of it is free these days. It's not to do with cost, whatever it might be, and they'll look at how they might be able to use it in their business. And they'll take risks, and they have, if you like, a culture of a toleration of failure. Because if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. We move on to something else. Now, in what I see in larger companies is often they've got procedures and disciplines in place. They try to avoid failure, and therefore, and something else they do is they'll take a technology. Let's just take something really simple like 3D printing. It's now pretty well universally recognized that the effect of 3D printing on the world is going to be greater than the Industrial Revolution. Right. But I go into large companies or medium-sized companies, and if they've even thought about 3D printing, it's the techies. It's their problem. It's up to them. It's nothing to do with anything else. Well, you know what? That isn't true. I've got all kinds of examples I can quote where I can show that 3D printing has helped grow sales, nothing to do with the techies, or helping with operational efficiency. You cannot allow this new technology to disappear into what I would call a silo. If you take something as really simple as a QR code, those things that look a bit like barcodes, it's not even brand new technology. But I'll talk to probably most CEOs in Europe and say, do you use QR codes? Oh, no, we tried those. Waste of time. It doesn't work for us, And I said, well, what do you use them for? Oh, well, the connection to the website. And the assumption with the QR code is it's something for marketing, nothing to do with anyone else. Wow. That just, again, isn't true. A friend of mine has got 7 pharmacies, 7 chemist shops in South Wales, and he has halved his inventory on the back of using QR codes. Nothing to do with sales and marketing. I came across recently a wonderful application of QR codes in Japan. Dementia patients. We all know dementia patients go walkabout sometimes and they forget where they are. So what they do in Japan, in this particular area, is they make a little mini QR code and they stick it with super glue on the thumb of each of their patients. They've told all the local community to watch out for them, and of course, all of us now on our iPhones, they come as standard with a QR code reader. Yes. So if they come across one of these people who's confused and a bit lost, they'll use their phone to check the QR code on their thumb and send them home. Wow. And what I'm asking chief executives, what I'm asking business leaders is, Who in your organization is thinking like that?
Wow.
It's nothing to do with cost. Cost of a QR code is zero. But who's thinking like this? Who's thinking, where can we use this technology? How might it help us? Because that's the way it happens in small businesses, and I don't see it happening in the same way in medium and large businesses, and it's a concern.
Right, incredible. Glad that you're pointing these things out. Now, one may ask, if you're business owners, what's the best way to develop this skill of really, thinking big or looking at the big picture, taking 20% of your time? In your experience of working with CEO, how best can we do this?
Well, firstly, it is very hard because you've got to discipline yourself. And I guess there's a couple of things. Firstly, it's very, very easy for us as business leaders to get sucked into the detail, to be down there in the mud and the bullets. Now, I'm not saying we should never do that. There are occasions when we do need to do that. Of course we do. But it isn't where we should be spending the majority of our time. And what that means is we've got to delegate more. Now, of course, we all know nobody can do the job as well as us. We're the boss. We can do it better than anybody else. We all know that. But we've got to start trusting people. We've got to delegate. We've still got to we mustn't abrogate our management responsibilities. We still got to have safety nets in place. But we've got to allow people to fail, if you like, but in a safe way, with a safety net. We've got to delegate more. I said earlier, we've got to find an extra 20% of our time. That means we've got to delegate more. We've got to make sure we're focusing on the really big issues. That's what our job is. So our first reaction to anything is not to try and give the answer, but to delegate it to someone. We've got a major something that's happened in our organization. What we should be doing is saying to one person, maybe it's 2 or 3 people, we put a committee together, we say, please have a look at that. Come back to me by whatever it is, 5 p.m. tomorrow evening, and give me your recommendations. That's the efficient and professional way of handling that, not rolling up your sleeves and getting stuck in straight away to demonstrate to them how to solve the problem. You've got to do that delegation, and you've got to trust people. And you've got to trust people no matter how young they are, no matter how inexperienced they are. Yeah. You must not micromanage them, otherwise you just won't recognize what's just that edge of the cliff that's arriving without you even noticing.
Indeed. In fact, one of the things that you're focusing on training is CEO and people with highest position is to allow the millennial to play their part. There's something interesting you mentioned in one of your blogs. I read somewhere that you recommend having the millennial on the top board.
Yeah. So let me explain that. I guess firstly, let's go back to this technology I mentioned. So new digital technology, as I say, is arriving at eye-watering speed.
Yes.
But the first thing we've got to do is to know what's there. How do we assimilate it? How do we even know it exists? And the answer to that is millennials, people under the age of 30, because somehow they just get it. I don't know if it's beamed straight into their heads or what, but they just get it. They know the latest this, the latest that, the latest the other. Right. There was a big piece of research done by PricewaterhouseCoopers not long ago looking at the future. And they made a statement which I thought was very profound. They said, for the first time in the history of business, we have got new young workers who know more about a key business tool than their more experienced colleagues. That's never happened in history before. And what we're talking about is this new digital technology. So what does that mean for us? Well, what it means is, as you just alluded to, we need to have millennials on the top table, and we need to listen to them. I actually rather mischievously in my latest book, I said that I think every company needs to have a CTEO, a Chief Technology Exploitation Officer, and when they reach the age of 30, you move them on because they're too old. And you know what? I'm more than half serious. SNCF, French State Railways, recognized that they needed this because I know some railway engineers, and they're very myopic. All they understand is railways, And at SNCF, what they did, they went out and recruited a young guy from Yahoo, and they set up something called TGV Club. They put him in charge. They said, recruit young people, and you have permission, you have authority to go absolutely anywhere in SNCF and look at anything and talk to anybody, but your job is to use the latest technology to help this business.
Right.
And my understanding is already they've come up with 3 major innovations which simply would not have happened otherwise, using new digital technology. So that's why millennials are so important. And there's consequences on our culture, and I think some of these consequences are pretty large because, never again can we say to young people, you join the company and you start on the bottom rung of the ladder and you work your way up. That's not what we want anymore. We need to be listening to them now. Now, I'm not saying that they've got all the experience and they know everything about everything, but they certainly know about all this new technology. We've got to get it from them, and then we've got to look and see just how we might use that in our company. And it might not be the obvious. 3D printing isn't necessarily for the techies. QR codes aren't necessarily just for sales and marketing. Facebook Live isn't just something personal. Just imagine, at one point, I had 3,500 employees across 14 countries. And one of the most difficult things to do, as I'm sure you know, you kind of large organization, is internal communication.
That's right.
Using Facebook Live, I could have said to every employee, look, 9 o'clock GMT on Friday, I'm going to do the State of the Union message, I'm going to talk to you. And with Facebook Live or Periscope, they're both the same, I could have been talking directly to them personally on their own personal smartphone, and they could have been responding to me. They could have said, boss, you didn't mention what's going on in Hong Kong. Can you tell us? A remarkable tool that costs nothing, but I come across almost no business leaders who are even thinking like that about how they might use it. And it scares me. Apps, smartphone apps. Whenever I run a masterclass anywhere in the world, at some point I'll ask the question. I say, okay, I might have 20 or 40 CEOs in the room. Put your hands up if you have got an app, a company app. Here in Europe, if I'm really honest with you, I never get more than 20% of the room.
Wow.
I was in Ethiopia last year. I spoke to 42 CEOs. Something like 60% put their hands up. And they said, well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you have an app? The moment you've got my app on your phone, I'm embedded with you. I'm your first choice supplier. And I said, absolutely right. Wow. And that's what I get everywhere around the world, So back to what CEOs need to be doing, they cannot, people with the sort of color hair I've got, I dye it grey for gravitas, as I'm sure you understand. But people with with the colour hair I've got, I come across them who say, oh, look, I just don't understand this stuff. I don't understand, cyberspace or the internet. And I say to them, in that case, you should not have the job you've got. It is your responsibility to understand that stuff, not how it works. I don't know how a microwave oven works, but I know what it does. You must be the same about digital technology. You cannot just assume to in that case delegate that to somebody else. It's too important.
Incredible, absolutely incredible.
I think, you guys, sorry to interrupt you, I think these are the most exciting times for business ever. But there is a big difference between the people who are getting it and the people who are not getting it. I've just read a fascinating book called The Second Machine Age by a couple of Harvard professors. It's very readable. And they're making the point that the difference between the people who are number one in the market they serve and number two is now becoming a chasm. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And a lot of that is on the back of what we've been talking about today. You cannot take the risk of ignoring this.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. Well, if you just joined us and you're just catching us right in the middle of this talk, I'm joined on the show today by the CEO expert, the master himself, Roger Harrop, all the way from Oxford, where here in England, where we are based. sharing with business owners about the critical skills that you need to develop if you're going to survive and win in the new game of business which we are experiencing today. Now, you mentioned something about the big picture. Are there any other critical skills other than understanding the big picture in incorporating the millennial and digital marketing that you feel business owner in our time needs to really harness on them for them to really get it?
Yeah, absolutely, Yukai. I would say the next thing we need to talk about is it's got to be a great place to work.
Right.
Again, there's research that's been done that shows that between now and 2030, there is going to be a war on talent worldwide. Right. So if you want talent in your organization, and why wouldn't you, then it's got to be a great place to work. Increasingly, I'm getting people telling me that when they're interviewing talent, they get interviewed by them. They say, what are the values of this organization?
Right.
And if you can't answer that, they'll walk. They'll rather be unemployed than work for you. And if you can answer it, the next question is, and please tell me how you walk the talk of those values. Again, there's research that shows this isn't just young people, it's right across the board. People wish to work for an organization whose values they share. It's vitally important. Is it on your website? Is it something that you can talk about? Because talent simply won't work for you unless you're able to share that. But there's a load of other things. One of the things I do in my masterclasses, there's some research I've got that was done asking employees what are the top 8 things in order of priority that they want from their employer. And by the way, money isn't mentioned, just as an aside. And I go through those and I get them to mark each one out of 10. What do they think their employees would say if I went into their company and asked them? And I ask them, so it ends up out of 100, let's say, what's acceptable? And they say, well, if it's not above 80, then, we shouldn't be sleeping at night. And I say, absolutely, I agree with you. But I've come across very few companies where that score is above 80. So that's something else. Business leaders cannot, if they have an HR department, they can't leave that to HR. They can't leave it to someone else. It's part of their job as the leader of the business to be making sure that it is an outstanding place to work. They ought to be getting feedback from their employees. It is something that should be on their desk regularly, just as important as whether you're meeting the budget in terms of the bottom line profitability.
Outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. And, I'm getting a lot out of it. I'm sure business owners who are listening are getting tons and tons of value.
Well, I hope so. And there's something else, So we've talked about this whole new technology bit. We've talked about being a great place to work. I mean, the next thing that I would say, and, this is painfully obvious perhaps, but nevertheless, I don't necessarily see it happen in the way that it should. Never again can we take the risk of assuming our customers, our clients are going to find us. We have got to prospect for business. We've got to constantly, non-stop prospect for business. And what I mean by prospecting is talking to people who have either never bought from us or, let's say, never bought from us in the last 3 years. Because if you stop doing that, you run a massive risk. I would go so far as to say it is irresponsible not to do that. Let me tell you a little story, Yuka, if I may.
Yes.
A very good friend of mine, he's a civil engineer, or he was a civil engineer, and he was one of the top people in the world at designing ports, harbours. And he'd worked for big consulting companies all his life, mainly in the UK, but also in Africa. And about 4 years ago, he was around 60, and he'd been saying to his employer, look, you need to get a couple of young guys alongside me to get all my knowledge out of my head, because it's not long till I retire. And they never did. And then finally this very, very large Australian consulting firm came to him and said, look, Peter, come over to Australia. We're building harbours in Western Australia like they've gone out of fashion. This is all the minerals going off to China. We need your expertise. We'll double your salary. Come over here for 3 years and make it your swan song. We're going to put a couple of young guys next to you, get out of here. So off he went. He and his wife, Carol, went off to Australia. And I always remember about 9 months or so later, he was back in the UK, and I said, Peter, how's it going? And he said, you know what, Roger? He said, I cannot believe what I found. He said, I've been there about 6 months or so, and I sort of was looking around and realizing there actually wasn't much going on. So I did what I would have always done. I asked where the prospect list was, and no one seemed to be able to tell me, because what I would do, naturally, would be to work on that prospect list to help see if I could help turn it into business. Yes. So in the end, I went and saw the CEO and said, look, I can't find the prospect list, and there really doesn't seem to be very much going on at the moment. As a result of, China going off the boil a little bit and so on, we're not building the ports we were. And finally, the chief executive said, Peter, you're absolutely right. We have been so busy for the last 10 years, there isn't a prospect list.
Wow.
We've been too busy to prospect. Now, you can imagine in that sort of a company, the lead time is, 18 months? To cut a very, very long story short, last year, they were sold to an American competitor for $1.
Oh.
And that is solely because they forgot to prospect. I mean, at the other end of the scale, I work with one-man bands. I work, for example, with fellow speakers starting out, and I mentor them. And the bit they're always surprised at is when I say, don't fill your diary with work. And they say, what are you talking about, Roger? That's what I'm trying to do. I said, no. You must leave something, it's that figure again, something like 20% of your time for marketing, for prospecting. Because otherwise you will not grow, your business will contract. And that's a very good rule of thumb, by the way. If you have whoever in your organization is responsible for selling, it might be you, it might be professional salespeople, it might be consultants, whatever you call them, whoever is responsible for selling should be spending at least 20% of their time prospecting. Wow. And that you should measure that. It should be one of the things, if you've got incentive schemes for salesmen, part of it should be talking to new prospects, because that's the only way you're going to grow the business. And you see, something I mentioned right at the top of this discussion, that not only is technology arriving at amazing speeds, but also markets are changing at amazing speeds. Nothing's a given anymore. There's no loyalty anymore from customers. Your second largest customer might disappear just like that. They might just move to China. They might go bust. We can all quote some very, very large corporations that have gone bust in the last 3 or 4 years. Who talks about Nokia these days? Who talks about Kodak? That can happen to you, and the only way to protect against it is constantly prospect. I had a rule of thumb in the PLC I ran, which was, and we had this as part of our monthly KPIs, of our orders that came in, our target was a third should be from customers who had not previously bought from us or not bought from us in the last 3 years. And we would measure this all the time, and we would make sure that that was what we were doing. And again, I'm going to use this strong language again. If as a business leader you're not doing that, you are being irresponsible. That's the only word I can say to you. It's so easy to say, I'm so busy, I've got these customers and they're giving me all the work I want. That's no good, because that's a great epitaph.
Wow, incredible. Well, it's incredible for any business owner who's looking to be in the game for a long time. Just to summarize what we've covered so far, the critical skills, if you want to get going and be in it to win, really have the big picture thinking. And secondly, create a great place to work. And thirdly, of course, consistently, prospect and market, get new clients. What an incredible show we've had here with Roger. Now, is there anything that I haven't asked you, Roger, here that you...
Well, yeah, there's one more thing I would say that the business leader has got to focus on. And again, it's perhaps obvious. And that is the bottom line. Now, there is only one way to grow a business. whether it's a commercial business, a not-for-profit, a charity, or a member association, the only way to grow a business is to generate something called profit that you reinvest in part or in whole into the business. There is no other way to grow your business. I work a lot with charities, and charities in particular say, well, no, that doesn't feel right. Well, it is. If you want to do the very best by your beneficiaries as a charity, if you want to grow so that you're doing it for more beneficiaries more often better, then you've got to have an attitude of mind which is to make money that you are reinvesting into giving those services. But exactly the same applies for a commercial business. Now, I never have to say this. In places like Hong Kong or Singapore, they shrug their shoulders and say, well, of course, that's what we're there for. We're there to make money. Why else would we exist? But it's sort of as you move towards the West, it all gets a bit muddied, you know. Again, a little story for you. I was working with a firm of architects in London. Slightly unusual shareholding. There were 6 shareholders, 4 of them were directors and 2 weren't. And I was doing a strategic retreat with them, and I always start out by just standing at the flip chart and saying, so what's the purpose of this business? Why does it exist? What does success look like? And I just write out what anyone said and what I got from them. And I was talking to their top 14 people at the top of the company, including the directors. And I got Save the Planet, I got Be the Best Architects in the World, and it went on and on and on. I'm on to the 2nd or the 3rd page, and I'm sort of thinking, okay, how are we going to deal with this? And then a very quiet voice, and it was the lady who ran their inside admin. She said very quietly, she said, I'm a shareholder in this business, and I'd quite like a return that's better than putting my money in the bank. And there was a silence, and then the CEO said, wow, we've never thought of that before. And you know what, it's in the front of my mind because he rang me up the other day and he said, you know what, Roger, that was a turning point for our business. I too flaming right, it's a turning point for your business. You have got to focus mercilessly on profit. It is not a dirty word. It is the way you grow your business. And it's something you need to do constantly. Just take overheads as an example. My experience is, and it's flaming hard work, but if you decide you're going to cut your overheads by 10%, you'll do it. Because people just get a bit lazy, whatever the term is. If you just decide, and it has to come from the top, we're going to cut our overheads by 10%, you'll do it. That goes straight on the bottom line to reinvest in the business. And another question I ask, which is, are you any good at what you do? And people always say they are. Well, in that case, what would happen if you put 1%, and I mean 1%, on your prices? Would you lose any business? Now, I get people who say, oh, well, we've got contracts. And I say, okay, just new business then. Whatever price you were going to charge for this new business, add just 1% to it. Would you lose any business? And of course, the answer is no. So I then say, so why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? Because that 1%, and we can all very easily work out what 1% of our turnover is, will go straight on the bottom line to reinvest in the growth of the business. You deserve higher prices. Now, we're talking net prices here. When I first go into a business, one of the first things I pull is I say, give me a low margin report. What I'd like is your gross margin. Give it me as a league table. So you've got the lowest margin at the top and the highest at the bottom for the last 12 months. And always, almost always, whenever I do that, that list is a shock to the chief executive. And they go, oh, what are we doing there? We're only making whatever, 10% margin. And they're off trying to, I say, no, come back here, don't go and try and sort it now. These are the facts. So what is the minimum margin you think you ought to be making in this business? I did this with a company I work with up in the north of England. Roger Smith was the name of the chief exec. And he said, well, it was a distribution business, absolute minimum of 25%. So I said, okay. And we drew a line. And then all those companies, all those customers who were above that line, in other words, where the margins were less than that, we decided a plan, a strategy, A, B, and C. The A people we would immediately go and say, okay, we're putting up your prices by X, whatever X was. It's probably 30% just to try and get that, but some big number, and we would take the consequences.
Right.
B, we said, oh, well, they're a bit strategic, so we'll do that slowly over the next 12 months. But at the end of 12 months, we will have got those prices up. And the third ones, we said, okay, really is strategic. It's a new customer. It's going to grow. And we put an end date on that, because this never happens with salespeople. They say, oh, no, you've got to invest because see what will come later. And then they forget it. So we said, okay, we'll give it whatever. Let's say 18 months. The end of 18 months, if they're not doing the job, we'll put the prices up. And I always remember we agreed all this. And the following month, I used to go up every 6 weeks and see this company. And I went up 6 weeks later, and I saw Roger Smith, and he was bouncing up and down like Tigger. I said, what's up, Roger? What's up? He said, well, I took the responsibility to do the A's, to put up people's prices by, he said it was on average about 22%. I said, yeah. He said, well, they all accepted, all bar one. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And he was bouncing up and down. So I gave him a hard time. I said, you don't win that one, Roger. Why didn't you do that 10 years ago? But that goes straight on the bottom line. That's our job as business leaders. We've got to look at the big picture of things like gross margin. So I will always do that. I'll pull a low margin report by customer, but I'll also pull a low margin report by product, because you'll always find some products where you're not charging what you ought to, and you go through the same sort of procedure. People say to me that they love my customer elimination campaigns and my product elimination campaigns, because that's actually what we're talking about. Because that's the way things happen. So price, costs, we have always got to be looking at the big picture of those. If you get into the detail, you can always rationalize it away and try and explain why. Just look at that big picture. And let's be honest, if you can get 1 or 2% on your gross margin, just imagine what that's going to do for your business in the future.
Huge, absolutely huge. Now, you've given us a lot of things to think about there and hopefully to implement in our business. Now, there will be people who wants to take this further, maybe become one of your clients. Where can they find you?
Oh, well, I'm based near Oxford in the UK. And if anyone sends me an email, it's roger@rogerharrop.com. By the way, it's ROGER, not RODGER, which some people put. Roger Harrop, HARROP for Peter.com. If you send me an email, I will always answer it. That's the first thing. As you said at the beginning, I travel the world a great deal. But I will always answer an email if I can. If you can get to one of my masterclasses, that's great. I'm next month. I'm in Ghana at Accra. I'm running a masterclass at the Ghana CEO Summit, and I'm doing a keynote speech. So basically, if you're anywhere in Africa, just pop over. Just pop over to Ghana, to Accra. I think it's the 20th and the 21st of May. I'd love to see you. I'm probably in the Indian subcontinent somewhere later in the year. Just keep an eye on my website. If you'd like, only once a quarter, I do a newsletter, a business tips newsletter. If you'd like that, if you go onto my website, you can sign up for that. And that always has an idea of my diary and where I'm going and where you can see me or hear from me. Incredible. But I'd love to hear from you.
Incredible. Well, we certainly love to have you here and share some principles that has helped you as a business owner, which you are teaching other CEOs to do. In fact, today we've learned quite a lot. And I know we will be talking later on about the mistakes business owners are committing. So if you are joining us and you want to learn more, Roger is going to be sharing with you some of the mistakes he has seen over the last 25 years that business owners implement and how you can avoid them in your business, in today, which is a very, very exciting time to be alive. Again, Roger, we want to thank you for being here with us and, sharing your expertise with our audience today.
It's my absolute pleasure, Yokai. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. One thing to point out to you, we could touch the area of big picture, having the right people in, like the millennials. Check out our website, which is worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. You get to get virtual assistants. All of our virtual assistants are millennials. You might find one person who can be a source of help to you. If you want to know more about that, just click the link below here or send an email to clients@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. With that said, have a great day and we wish you all the success in your endeavors. Goodbye for now.
Thank you for listening to UKAI Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.ukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.